welcome everyone to another exciting episode of Riding Through the Unknown. I'm your host, Michael, and with this being Halloween week, I have a special treat for you all tonight. This show that we have tonight does still fall under what we normally talk about on this show, but it's going to have a little bit of a twist to it. And so it is my great pleasure, honor, and my blessings and everything to have this guest come on. I felt she was the perfect one for tonight with everything going on, and I've been talking with her backstage, so you all are in for a huge treat. We are going to have so much fun tonight, and we're going to be delving into topics you guys might be surprised to have coming up on here. So I'm going to stop rumbling or rambling even, and I'm going to turn it over to my amazing guest, the one, the only, mystical, talented Luna LaFae.
Hi, thank you for having me on your show. My name is Luna LaFae, and I am a hereditary witch. Or you could also say I come from a long line of wise women, healers, and strong, mystical women.
That's very cool. And I like how you use the term wise woman because I think that's a term that was around for a while, but then sort of disappeared. And so when I saw you use that term, I was like, that's really cool that you're bringing that term back and in such a really cool way, too, that people understand what it was. Because, yeah. So thank you for that.
Of course.
So, what's it like coming from a long line of wise women?
Well, it's very interesting because I know that was not raised like a lot of people were. My mom grew up in the craft. We have Celtic ancestry, so a lot of our beliefs are kind of based in those particular traditions because we're Irish. And we're not too far removed from the old country. I'm only second generation American on my mom's side. She was English and Irish, and both sides of her family were actually psychics, and they also read tarot. But back then, it was a lot more scarce to find tarot cards, so they used playing cards. We also read tea leaves, used pendulums, things of that nature too.
You mentioned reading playing cards, and I've heard of that, and I've never been able to figure out how do you actually read playing cards because I know in the tarot decks you get messages from the pictures and the meanings to the cards. So, how do you read, in actuality, a deck of playing cards?
Well, how I got started reading playing cards was I was very interested because I remember there was one night that I woke up. It was really late at night, and I went to go and find my mom, and I saw her reading tarot cards, and I saw what she was doing, and then ever since I saw that, I just became obsessed. And at that time, I was too young to actually read the tarot cards, in her opinion, because of some of the depictions on the cards are not necessarily suitable for children. So my mom taught me how to read playing cards, before I kind of graduated to reading tarot. And how you would read the playing cards is basically like there's suits in the playing cards, just like there's suits in tarot. And then the Joker card would represent the Fool. but that's really the only major arcana card that actually would be within the playing cards.
Okay, so you're just taking out the major arcana basically and using like ace through king just like you would with wand, pentacles, or whichever
Yes.
term. Okay, that's really interesting. And so is it, do you get images through the color of the card or the suit, or how, or does the information just come irregardless of what you see?
Well, when it's you break it down, clubs would be wands, diamonds or pentacles, spades or swords, and hearts are cups. So that's kind of how you would differentiate um, the different suits. And then the Fool card, or the Fool card would have been represented by the Joker, which in tarot we all kind of play the Fool as we're going through this journey. So you still have that representation of the Fool. And you could also too, I mean, a lot of it is intuition as well. So you are picking up things intuitively. Then once I kind of graduated from reading the playing cards, then when I was about 13, I was kind of brought into more of it's kind of like a rite of passage for a witch, at least for me. I started my moon cycle, and then my mom was like, okay, you're old enough to read the tarot. Here, you can have my old tarot deck. So, like, I practiced on it all the time. Like, I was just so obsessed with it. Like, I used these cards until like they fell apart. Like, we had to tape them together, and like I used them so much. Like, I was just completely obsessed.
No, that's really cool that you were taught that, because a lot of people don't realize this when, like, I was growing up, tarot was not something that you would see in a store or at like Amazon, or it was not readily out there, and it was not thought of like it is today. And so I think it's really cool that you were raised and taught it and were able to naturally progress in it. So that's really cool.
Thank you. It was nice to have that kind of support um, with those types of beliefs and that kind of upbringing. I felt like that was just a really huge part of who I am, is the fact that my mom and the women in my family were very supportive of these types of gifts. And I had a lot of these gifts when I was very young too. Like, I saw a lot of things and heard, things that other people didn't hear. And, my mom didn't just, oh, that's your imagination, or you're just seeing things. It was like I would have some kind of vision, or I would see something, and my mom would put the things together and be like, that's because of, X, Y, and Z. So like there was plenty of times where like I was basically kind of like a haunted child. Like spirits and things like that would come to me because they felt comfortable, and I think that they knew that I had a gift. And I do believe that, you know, most people do have these gifts. They either have been denied them, they haven't had a chance to practice them, they didn't have the support they needed. Like, I really do believe that we all have these gifts to some extent. It's just some people utilize them more and it just becomes stronger.
And that makes total sense, and I agree. And one thing that's I'm kind of curious about, because you say, like, you watched your mom doing it when you were growing up and were like, ooh, that's really cool. Do you think that's what kind of in your mind made you go, I want to follow in these footsteps? Or do you feel like it was your choice to follow along the lineage? Or, hey, this is the genetic line, I'm expected to do this, so I'm gonna do this. What was your
Um,
experience like?
I never really felt like I was expected to do it. It was very much welcomed for me because it was just so interesting, and it was just always kind of part of who I am. And so I wanted to learn as much as I could about just esoteric things in general.
So, do you feel like because you were more open and you were supported that way, that reading the cards maybe came easier to you? Or do you feel like you still had to put in the work and really study hard and really like grind the stone, so to speak?
I think it was a little bit of both because, like, I do use my intuition when I read the cards, but I also have a really good idea of what all the cards mean because, like, I like to read, and when I read something, I like it to be something where I'm learning because I love to learn things, especially things that are like special interest things for me, like tarot and astrology and just anything esoteric. So I never really felt like I struggled with it too much because I felt like I had that support.
No, that's really cool. That's cool. And I'm, I'm amazed that you had that. And so it's like my mind is like having a hard time, like going, man, it's because it's so unusual to hear that it's like, wow, it's like, that's just, yeah, that's why I keep saying that's so cool, is because I'm like amazed that, you grew up with that in that way, that you don't hear about that often. And so that is, I'm really glad that you had that and that you were able to explore all that you wanted to explore without any judgments or being held back.
And I think that really helped me develop my gifts too because my mom never, denied or treated me like I was crazy. If I saw something, she would ask me like, "Well, what did you see? What did you hear?" And then she could find ways to, support me in that and be like, "Well, oh, this is why, you saw this figure is because, this happened here." Because it
Yeah.
used to, I mean, honestly, like seeing ghosts and spirits and stuff as a kid, it scared the hell out of me. And for the longest time, I kind of felt in a way like it was like a curse because like I would see and hear things that other people didn't, and and people treat you like you're weird because that's not something that, everybody's familiar with.
Oh, I totally understand. And me, with my abilities, I was always either keeping it quiet, or if it slipped out, I'd have to come up with a quick cover because, yeah, everybody will tease you. And it's like, you don't want to be teased. So it's like, quick, come up with a cover, like, oh, you didn't hear that. You misunderstood what you heard or something, because it's like, yeah, it's not easy. And so I grew up having the choice of what I wanted to believe and pursue, like you did. And so I was blessed. And that's why I was like, hearing your story, I was like, I didn't know there were other people out there really like me who were able to pick and choose, because normally everybody wants somewhat in the normalcy category, and normalcy is, I think, overrated.
I do too. I mean, honestly, I really think, I mean, what is normal anyway? I mean, that's just a relative term. Nobody really is like normal. Everybody's trying to be normal where everybody should just be themselves. And I think it's
I
kind of
mean,
sad because it just seems like everybody's so worried about trying to fit in that they're not embracing their true self.
yeah, and that's where there was a movie, and there was one line in it that stood out, and it was about a girl who went to England, I think, to meet her family or something, and this one guy that she liked goes, "Why are you trying to fit in when you were born to stand out?" And when I heard that, it's like something resonated in me, and I was like, that is so true. Why do we try to fit in when we're all born with all these different abilities and different gifts that make us stand out because we are who we are, not because we're sitting there holding a flag that says, "Look at me, I do this."
In a way, it's just kind of giving your power away because you're kind of disowning parts of yourself because you're so afraid that you won't be loved. Because I mean, what at the end of the day, everybody wants to be cared for and they want to be loved, and they think that they're not going to be loved for who they are. When in actuality, I mean, if you're your most authentic self, anybody who likes you is going to loves you is going to authentically love you for who you are. And that's pretty empowering.
I agree, and that's one of those things, where I have friends who are, like I call them surface friends, and we talk about surface topics. And then I have friends who are on the path or aware, like you and I are. And I'm like, yeah, I work and I talk more with them because I'm like, that's my true foundation, my true family. And yeah, it's important. And I like to, as much as possible, make them feel appreciated and not take advantage of. And yeah, I mean, they are so important, and it is so important to have that. And talking about having loved ones, you and I were talking before we got started that you have a loved one that you wanted to share a little bit about. So this seems like a good time. Do you want to talk about her?
Oh yes. I My great grandmother was from Ireland. Her name was Sarah Winifred Tierney, and she was a psychic medium in the Detroit area. And we're talking back in the 30s. This was the 1930s and 40s when a lot of this stuff was not popular and not talked about. But she was actually a psychic medium, and she would have um, people who were pillars of the community who used to go to her for advice, and she would read their cards and read their tea leaves, and she would have seances. So like her home, she used to do it out of her home. But she had a lot of clients, and I actually even have a certificate that was hers from 1934, the Spiritual Psychic Science Mistral Union. Um, but yeah, I usually have it framed, but I took it out of the frame so that I could share it with everyone because it's very special to me.
No, that is special because when you think about the timing, the 1930s, you don't hear a lot about women going through and getting like degrees or licenses of that caliber. Like women were allowed like secretarial school or nursing school, but they
Hmm.
weren't the front and center. So that's really cool that she was able to get that. And that's quite an accomplishment, actually. So I'm glad you have that and that you're keeping it in such great shape.
Yeah, yeah, it's very special to me, and I do find it very interesting because those were times when people just they didn't talk about those types of things. Not like how we talk about them now, like, tarot and astrology and all this witchy stuff is so popular right now, and that's great. But like growing up, my mom told me to not tell anybody that we were witches because she was so afraid that we would get burned at the stake, basically. She's like, people either gonna make fun of you for it, they're gonna call you a witch, they're going to, want you to read their cards all the time, or, just fill in the blank. So for the longest time, I just didn't really share it, but as years went on, I got more and more comfortable with it. And it's like, you know what? This is who I am, and I'm just going to express myself. And now, we have this, you know, huge interest in esoteric things now, which I do think is a great thing. Um, so what better time than now to share that?
Exactly. And I mean, and it's a kind of, in a strange way, shows the progression of humanity in a way of where things that were we grew up with that you did not mention, like you said, because yeah, we, being burned at the stake or crucified or, being basically tortured was always in the forefront. Now we're in an age where if you say something to someone like, oh, I read tarot, or oh, I am a medium, or I see UFOs all the time, people are like, hey, that's really cool. No, not all people, but they're more out there than there used to be. So it is showing the progression of life and growth on this planet that, like you're saying, it's now able to be discussed and shared openly, and people are genuinely wanting to experience it and not experience it to make fun of it or anything like the old days.
Hmm. Yeah, people are a lot more open to it. I mean, here and there you'll, still catch some people saying, things that are, not so nice about it. But for the most part, I mean, people are pretty open to it. But, a lot of times, like I hear, from people, oh, well, I have a friend that reads tarot. And it's like, but yeah, I've been doing this practically my whole life.
No, yeah, and I think is great about you sharing your story and sharing what you do now is the generations that are coming behind us are going to look at this and go, I'm able to do this because of people like Luna, who stood up, declared, who they were, owned who they were, and we are now living in a world where this is normal, the new normal, because of people like you and people like me. So, thank you for sharing your stories and everything. And I know that sounds like I'm ending this episode, but I'm really not. We have a whole lot more to talk about. I just wanted to take that moment just so you know as well, the impact that you're having without sitting there going, this is why I'm doing it. It's a side effect. That's a great side effect. So, yeah, thank you for that. And I think what's amazing too is you're empowering people to, stand up and, like you're saying, I read tarot. I've been reading it for a long time. Somebody who reads that may be sitting here and going, well, I read, but I don't think it's safe to come out, may sit there and go, well, let's test the waters, and may have the courage to say to a friend, hey, have you ever experienced a tarot reading? Can I read for you? And build their comfort. So thank you for that.
Absolutely.
So, did mediumship come with you at the same time as you were learning the tarot, or did one come before the other?
The mediumship I've had most of my life. Like I said, like I feel like I've been haunted most of my life. Being able to see things. When I was very little, I was probably like 2 or 3. I remember a shadowy woman coming to me, who was holding a lantern, who was trying to give me a message. And I was absolutely terrified, and I went and I ran to my mother and I told her about it. And at first she thought I was talking about the neighbor, and I'm like, "No, mom, it wasn't the neighbor. It was a shadow woman." And like looking back on it now, I mean, I'm almost certain that it was the goddess Hecate. I think that she was really trying to give me some sort of message. But when I was little, a lot of that stuff, it really just frightened me. Like not being able to sleep, like for the longest time when I was little, I was just an insomniac because like I could sense spirits and things around me. Like there's been there was a lot of times where I could feel somebody sitting at the end of my bed. Um and then my mom would just, she would talk to me about it, and she's like, well, she believed me. She never doubted, that I was just my imagination or anything like that. She said, well, it was somebody who was sitting at the end of your bed. And like, how did that make you feel? Did you feel comfortable? Like, were you afraid? And I was like, well, not necessarily. And my mom would talk to me and she'd say, well, I think that's probably someone who had crossed over, that was a family member who was looking out for you. Another thing too is I pick up on smells too. Like one of the things that I've noticed when a spirit is around, is I smell, it smells like coins, like old pennies.
That's really cool, actually, to have that, because I've never thought about, is there a smell when they come around? Because normally I just hear and I'm like, oh, someone's here. Hold on. Oh, can you repeat that? I wasn't paying attention. And so it's cool that you're aware enough to go, oh, there's that smell. Someone's here. But
Mhm.
a question that I have for you that I'm sure some mediums, would probably ask if they were in the audience is, do you have an agreement with them to shut it off at certain times, or like take breaks from it, or is it like nonstop and you've just acclimated to it?
When I was a kid, um, it was nonstop. So I didn't have, um, the tools at the time to be able to handle it, like grounding myself and, you know, cleansing a space and things of that nature. I When I was little, like I said, it scared me. It really did, because like I would, you know, sense something in the middle of the night, and then there would be like this apparition standing there. And to me, when I see a spirit, I see, um like these colors, and sometimes they're like these shifting colors. And sometimes it'll be like just like the outline of a person, like a shadow kind of. And then there's been other times where I've had spirits that have come up to me and I've just seen like their head, where they
So,
were trying to talk to me and like I saw their mouth moving, but I couldn't exactly hear what they were saying.
okay. So, do you think studying Reiki and, becoming a Reiki healer kind of tempered what you were experiencing and made it more comfortable? Or was it vice versa? You were like, hey, I'm seeing all these things and I need to know there's got to be something I can do. So you saw Reiki and were like, that looks like it'll help. Let's go learn that.
Well, the Reiki really helped me. I would say when I was younger, sometimes I would just try to shut it off, basically. But it's not that simple. Like you can't just like shut off your gifts. Like you have to find a way to be able to handle them, as much. And my mom, she did try to help me with that. A lot of it was just, explaining things and just trying to give me some tools that she had, but being able to work with others, because like I belong to a couple of different covens, so I was able to learn like grounding techniques and cleansing and things of that nature, and working with crystals more because I love working with crystals. And then with Reiki, my friend actually is a teacher. She's a shaman, and she um, showed me a lot of ways that I could ground myself and uh, kind of control the energy within myself. Because like we can't really control things that are external, but we can control what's internal.
That's a great point. And I'm curious, and with it being Halloween, if you can share, you don't have to, beyond the shadow, lady holding the lantern, are you comfortable with sharing some of your more spooky experiences that you had, maybe reading cards or being a medium?
Yes. So growing up, one of the things that I've pretty much had to adapt to my whole life was the fact that I had an older brother who passed away before I was born. And I had he had visited me a couple times when I was very little. There was times where my mom would actually see him in the room with me, and he would be um over by like my toy chest, and he would be, you know, trying to like play with the toys and be near me. So even though I didn't get a chance to actually meet him on, this earthly plane, I knew him in a spiritual way. And there was one night that I had gotten spooked over something that I had seen, which was him. Um, and the door on in my bedroom was shut, and my mom and my sister were downstairs, and I was, basically banging on the door for them to let me out. And I yelled out my brother's name, and my brother's name was Toddy. So I was yelling, Toddy, Toddy, Toddy. And my mom and my sister both like looked at each other and then ran upstairs. And then, they came and checked on me to make sure I was okay. And there's no way that I could have known. I was only like maybe like two, maybe three tops. I wasn't very old at all.
So, do you think your brother is watching over you and
Yes,
helping you?
yes, I do. Like, I think that he still has like that protective energy over me with him being my older brother. I mean, he I if he'd be 10 years older than me, and he was a little boy when he had passed, and, yeah, he's come to visit me a couple times, when I was little, and then here and there too, even as an adult. Uh, I mean, he's shown up in dreams of mine, and when I was little, I mean, all through my life, essentially, my mom was always at the cemetery, like, planting flowers, so I would help her plant flowers at his grave, and I spent a lot of time at the cemetery when I was little, and I remember just kinda walking around and looking at all the different graves and just being curious, and, you look at all those graves and, those are all people and they all have a story, and I remember kind of, like, when I was walking in the cemetery, I went and I walked over a grave and I got this feeling, and I heard something say, "Please don't walk on our graves." And I was like, "Okay, I can respect that." So I went and I told my mom about it, and her eyes got huge, and she's like, "Honey, you're kinda creeping me out." And I'm like, "I'm sorry, mom. I'm not trying to be creepy. I just am creepy. I'm sorry." And so, like, I've always had this fascination with cemeteries for the fact that I find them very interesting, but at the same time, like, I know if I go into a cemetery, I'm gonna start feeling things, and I'm gonna start picking up on different energies of people who have passed, because it's almost like they come to me, they're like, "Oh, somebody who can speak for me, somebody who can, yeah, she might be able to see us," you know? So, it's it's pretty interesting.
And then I love the fact that your mom, being who she is, with your grandparent, your grandmother, and great grandmother, the fact that you were creeping her out really kind of makes me laugh because I'm like, wow, I would think she would be on a level where creeping her out would be really hard to do.
Yeah, well, that's kinda what I thought too, because I don't think she realized, like, those particular how deep those particular gifts were within me, I guess, because I think that she didn't like the fact that I was so, like, interested in death and things like that, that kind of creeped her out because, like, I was fascinated with some of these graves, like, I would go and try to find the oldest grave that I could in the cemetery, and, like, there was one I clearly remember, it was just like a rock slab, and they tried to, use pebbles to, like, write their name out on these graves, so I'm, like, running and telling my mom all about it, and she's just like, "Okay." Like, I guess she didn't think that, like, I would be that interested, you know?
I'm wondering, instead of interested, I wonder if the word is tapped in.
Yeah. I mean, that probably in tune, yeah, that's probably a better way to put it. So
Yeah.
I think that she was really surprised that, my gifts were that strong. I didn't think that she really realized at that point, because I was so young, that um those gifts were so strong within me. Because I
And that,
mean, my mom has gifts and she could see things too, but not to the extent that I could. I mean, she kinda had more of her own gifts. That was the other thing too, with the women in my family, like, we all have these gifts, but there's gifts where, like for my sister, for example, like my sister is great with holistic stuff. She knows all about like all the herbs. Like she helps heal in that way. And she reads tea leaves and does aromatherapy and those types of things, but not so much like the mediumship, the tarot, the astrology, and things like that, like I do. And like my mom can literally grow anything. Like eh, like to say she had a green thumb, like she had two green thumbs, if that's possible. Like she could literally grow anything. And I mean, she was great at tarot and tea leaves and things like that. And then my grandma, I mean, she was very into astrology and reincarnation, um, just a lot of those types of things. Tea leaves was a very common thing within the family. Like we all read tea leaves. That was one of the things that we used to do. We would sit around and drink tea, read tarot, and then we were done with our tea, we would read each other's tea leaves. And like I remember being extremely little and them even passing me the teacup to ask me what I saw in there. And then I would just read their teacup, and my mom and my sister were just like really entertained by it, like, oh yeah, what else do you see, you know? So it was really nice to have that support.
And I, it's funny because you were like asking me, like why, as a guest, what, drew me and, like how we connected. And I was like, I could feel something similar because I didn't know your bio at the time. But hearing you talking about like going into cemeteries and stuff, I had, being a paranormal investigator, I will stop to random cemeteries on the side of the road and walk around and look at, respectfully, like you're saying, I don't walk on the graves, but next to them, and I'm reading, the dates, who they were, and if they were soldiers. I'd always say, well, I would look at the date, being a history major, I knew when conflicts ended. So I was like, say, like when the Civil War, when a date was like 1850, I'd be like, well, I'm glad you were able to come home from the Civil War. Probably experienced things that were horrific, but I'm glad you at least made it home safely and, lived a little bit longer. And it's like it just naturally just flows out. And yeah, I look for the oldest graves too to see who's there and what the story of past to present. And so I think it's kind of interesting that both of us kind of do the same thing.
And I do find that fascinating too. Like I don't get to go as much as I would like to, but I love ghost hunting and going to haunted places and things of that nature as well.
Well, that it is interesting. And do you feel like if you walk, like, you're saying when you go in cemeteries, you're connected and everything to everyone. And do you ever go into locations and you're like, I don't know what it is, but something's here watching me, and I know nobody else is in this room, and you just naturally start picking up, like, I guess beings here and there, or spirits, or do you feel like they're always earthbound, or have you ever encompassed, meeting like what we would call extraterrestrial or star beings?
I mean, I think that it's kind of both. I think that there are I think a lot of spirits can kind of come and go. I remember my mom telling me that she had a dream about my brother, and he came and visited her, and she asked him if he was okay, and he said, "I'm okay. I'm okay, Mom. I know the way." And I feel like there are these different energy portals in which, spirits and things can come out of. And then there's also portals that they can leave also. Um, and there's all kinds of different portals, all over the place. And I believe that they can come and go. Like, I don't really necessarily believe like any of these spirits are necessarily in purgatory.
Well, it's interesting you bring up purgatory because it, uh, not growing up in the church or anything, but I knew what purgatory was through hearing like my dad talk about it or other friends going, "Oh, you're going to be in purgatory," and I was like, "Whatever, it's just a existence somewhere." And then recently, the church is like, "Oh, purgatory's closed," and my first thought was, "Well, since you guys created this, what happened to everybody now that you closed it?" And nobody seems to think about that, but that's where my mind works. Is if you created this dimension for somebody and then you close it, what happens to all those people?
Right. Now, I have had to help spirits like cross over. There's certain spirits that I feel kind of do hold on, but I don't think it's necessarily like a purgatory thing. Like, some of them will attach themselves to an item. That's why you got to like cleanse things after you buy them, especially if you buy them from like an antique store or a thrift shop. You got to be careful because sometimes um spirits and things, like, they have this favorite thing and they'll kind of like attach themselves to it. Um, but I have helped spirits cross over because I think sometimes they might be afraid to.
I agree because when I did hospice work as a volunteer and my parents did the same thing and we would hear this a lot is I can't die because I don't want to go to hell. There's I want to go to heaven, but I'm not deserving. And I'd always say, "Why are you not deserving?" They're like, "Well, because I think because I did this, this, and this." And I said, "Well, who told you you're not deserving?" "Well, the church told me this." And I was like, "What?" And I was like, "Okay, so let me get this straight." And it kind of hurt me in a way to hear all these people who were, instead of embracing going on to the next plane of existence, being with family that's passed before them, and joining, like, um, you talk about being Celtic, the Vikings, how you would enter the halls of the ancestors and you'd be greeted by your ancestors. So death was welcome. To where now it's like something to be afraid of. And so, yeah, that hurts me, in my heart when I hear that, because I'm like, it's not right that anybody should ever tell anybody they're not deserving to go to where they want to go to have a happy next life or afterlife.
I kind of feel that Earth is like a school, basically. Like, we're here to learn things and to evolve and try to be better, spiritually, and then we kind of cross over. And then I do feel not necessarily that there's a judgment, but like, did you fulfill what it is that you were supposed to fulfill in this lifetime? Um did you, learn those things? And, we're all learning and we're all human. We're spirits having a human experience. And I think we get kind of hung up on being human. And I mean, don't get me wrong, there's definitely bad things that people do and there's bad people out there. But I feel like for the most part, like, I don't personally believe in hell. I would say I don't mean this in a negative way, but there's, places on earth and things that have happened here that I would imagine would be hell like, instead of, crossing over. And I think that fear of the unknown and the control, because I feel like that's what it is, unfortunately, with some churches. I'm not going to say all of them, but I feel like a lot of it's just control.
It is, I agree. And it's something that I'm glad to see is changing, that some of them, a lot of them are starting to loosen up on that and not be so into the, oh my gosh, you didn't come to church on Sunday this many times, you didn't tithe, and so you're going to hell. That it's more of your deeds are now determining. So if you make a mistake, you made a mistake. If you learned from it and made a better choice next time, you're not going to be punished for that. But if you keep making the same mistake over and over, you may, have to come back and figure out why you got stuck in the loop of repeating that lesson over and over.
Right, because you had to come back because you still didn't learn it yet.
It's like, you committed the same crime 10 times. Did you not figure it out the first time or the first 5 times not to do that? It's like, why did it take you 10 times? But yeah, and I'm finding it really curious. And I know I'm looking at the clock and we're getting close to the hour, but do you have time to talk a little bit more about stuff, or do you have to go?
Oh, I can talk for a little while longer.
Okay. So I'm wondering, because Reiki, and I know there's different versions of Reiki. And so I'm curious, with your background with being the wise woman, witchy side, and the mediumship, which Reiki do you feel like called to you, and do you utilize? Like, are you one of those that just uses flat energy, or do you use some mediumship in it, or do you go with the elements?
Mostly for me, it's um, see, the thing that's very interesting about Reiki is it's a type of energy healing, and it's very similar to what the church would call the laying on of hands, because I did for a brief amount of time go to church. It was when I was a little bit older. I was in my late teens, and I went to a non-denominational church where they spoke in tongues, and they did healing by the laying on of hands, which is the energy healing through the Holy Spirit. And I believe that Reiki is very similar to that, because you're using that spirit within you. And I mean, you can call it the Holy Spirit, you can call it, the divine spirit, or, it doesn't really matter. I feel like what name, because I feel like everybody is just so hung up on the names of everything. Um, that, it's healing, and it's putting that essence, into someone to try to help them. It's a good energy and it's a healing one. And I just feel like a lot of that stuff is just kind of one and the same, and everybody's just so hung up on the name of it. And I find that to be kind of unfortunate, because you see a lot of people who, they don't believe the same things, but yet we're kind of all doing the same things, just but calling it different names.
Right. And I just wanted to clarify when I was talking about mediumship style is I was taught a form of Reiki where if it was on the right side, I think it was, that was feminine. And there could be a blockage from somewhere on your mother's side. And if it was on the other side, it could be a blockage from somewhere on your dad's side. It was the masculine line. And so that's what I meant by
Oh,
mediumship, is reading the body and where the blockage could be coming from.
well, the particular Reiki that I was taught was the Dragonfire Reiki. That was the one that I was taught, that I enjoy using. I feel like that's a more like transformative type energy. And I also like to read, books and different things about that particular subject as well. And it's just very interesting how all these different light codes, have different meanings. And um, just how it's just amazing to me that these are basically like these universal teachings and healings that everybody's, not everybody, but spiritual people are utilizing. And I think it would just be wonderful if everybody could just, collaborate, even if they don't necessarily have the same belief systems.
I agree. And I'm curious because I feel like you might have experienced this, because me being metaphysical and you being who you are, being both being raised free minded and thinking for ourselves. When I first did Reiki, I would see like I would call them little strings, and like harp strings almost, and they would be kind of like you could see them grayish where blockages were, and like plucking them, and all of a sudden like the light would start to shine through. It's like almost like you dusted the lines and took the dust off, and so they were able to shine the light, and it helped the person. And so I was curious if ever when you were doing Reiki, if you saw something similar to that, like lines where you could see were diminished or needing just a quick snap of energy to regenerate it.
I think it's interesting that, I feel like different people experience it in a different ways. Whenever I feel an energy block from someone, I always end up feeling it like in my palm, like it feels very heavy. And that's like when I can feel like that's that knot that somebody basically has, or that um just like a negative like energy orb, or ball, or something of that nature. So like that's when I can feel that that's where they would need healing. Um I do understand what you're saying about like the strings and things like that, cuz like I do kind of feel that as well. And then that's kind of like the energy cord, where it's like, okay, so I experience a lot of that, like if I'm cutting cords for a client, that's when I know that I need to start cutting cords for them and trying to pull that particular energy out of their body.
That's really cool. I never thought about them as the cords to cut. That's I'll have to think about that one. You gave me something to think about if that's what I'm seeing. And when I was talking about elemental, is because I remember having an experience where I was doing Reiki on myself, which I was originally taught you don't do on yourself. But I was like, if I need healing, I'm going to heal. And so, but that aside, I would feel like electricity in my hands, and I would see like lightning around and like pulling in lightning and feeling like that like boosted the healing that I needed. And when I told my pagan teacher about it, her first reaction was, "You shouldn't be able to do that. You're not at that level." I thought, and it surprised her. And so I naturally have this sense of being able to pull in if I need an element or just energy or both. I can mix it, pull it in, and send it to who needs it. Have you come across that experience where you have that as well, where you call in like lightning or water or air?
For me, a lot of times it's fire because that's my particular element. I have a lot of Aries in my birth chart, and that's my element. Like probably like almost half of my birth chart is in Aries. So I do work with fire a lot, but I do have like my rising. I'm a Cancer rising and a Scorpio moon, so that's where the water comes in. So those are usually the two that I work with the most if I'm going to work with elementals, because those are the ones that are like the strongest for me.
No, that's really cool. And I've been kind of holding this question back because I don't know why I'm thinking it the way I'm thinking it. And I keep trying to work it into something that makes sense to me. And I feel like if I keep waiting for that, I'm going to miss my opportunity to ask it. So I'm just going to simply ask it. And if you can make sense of it, great. That would be awesome. If not, no hard feelings. But
Okay.
you talk about being in tarot and astrology, and I keep seeing them like mixing and being like, is there astrology in tarot? And do you utilize that? And how do you utilize it?
Oh, absolutely. So, tarot and astrology are kind of like BFFs. Um, so they're the different suits also represent the different elements. So, like wands in tarot would be the fire signs. So that would be Sagittarius, Aries, and Leo. And cups are the water signs, Cancer, Pisces, and Scorpio. Pentacles are earth, so that would be Taurus, uh, Capricorn, and Virgo. And um, then the sword suit would be air, which would be Aquarius, Gemini, and Libra. And then also through the major arcana, the astrology for those particular cards, all the different major arcana also have different um, astrological correspondences.
That is so fascinating to me because I'm starting to get a sense from talking with you and other guests that as much as astrology is viewed as pseudoscience, it's in everything.
It really is. One of the things that I think that people have a big hang up when it comes to astrology is there's so much focus on the sun sign. Yes, your sun sign is important, but your rising sign is, I would say, is even more so important. So like I'm an Aries sun, but I have a Cancer rising. And I remember when I was really getting into astrology and I was going through and I was reading these books about it. And I was like, well, yeah, I feel like an Aries. And then I was reading through them and then I got to um a sign of Cancer. And I was like, okay, ruled by the moon, water sign, intuitive, emotional, things like that. And I was like, and just kept reading and reading. And I'm like, this sounds way more like me than Aries does. And but your whole birth chart really does matter when it comes to astrology. So we just basically get the Reader's Digest version of astrology when it comes to like if you open up the newspaper and you're like, oh, I'm going to read my horoscope, and you just read your sun sign, you're like, meh, that doesn't really you know, fit what I'm trying to do here, or it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. And then I think that's where it kind of lost some of its value, is because it was kind of made cheap, where it astrology, there's just a lot to learn. There's different angles in astrology. There's all the different houses that the signs are in, and like how all those different signs correspond with each other, the different transits that go on, because I mean, those are the heavens. And I was personally taught, like, I don't consider myself a religious person. I am a spiritual person. But one of the things that I always found very fascinating was I remember my mom telling me that um, the three wise men were actually they were into astrology, because that was, they were even using astrology back then. And that's how they basically, figured out, the Messiah was coming, and, when he would be born, and all things of that particular nature, which I thought was extremely fascinating. Um, but there's just so much that you can dive into when it comes to astrology. Like it will, like, getting your birth chart done can really tell you a whole lot about yourself. Like, I can look at somebody's birth chart and I can tell what their past lives were. I can, tell, what they've been through in their life, what they're possibly going to go through in the future. I mean, we still have free will, but a lot of those same themes and things like that do come up.
That's really interesting. And I had a guest on who gave a presentation that I saw at a conference. He shared it with us on the show. His name is Micah Denk. And he showed how when you look at the Bible, when you're reading the verses, how they don't make sense. But if you take the word like ram and you put in Virgo, I think it was, or Capricorn, sorry, the ram was Capricorn, and you start encoding it through the zodiac, it's like everything made sense, because like shepherds are not out in the wintertime. But when you look at the signs of the zodiac, oh, well, the zodiac sign was out in winter in the sky. So that makes more sense than, reading a shepherd who's watching his flock in winter going, flocks aren't out in winter. So this doesn't make sense. And it gets confusing. And so it was really interesting to see how the zodiac, when applied to all the books of the Bible, how stories started making sense all of a sudden.
And our particular calendar too that we go by is not like nature's calendar. It is a man-made calendar that it kind of has thrown a lot of things off balance, and makes it kind of hard, I think, for people to connect a lot of those things also with astrology and things of that nature.
Which raises an interesting question. I just thought about this, and you might be the perfect person to answer this. Is the original calendar under nature is 13 months and I think like 20 days or something like that. But irregardless, being 13 months, we only have 12 symbols of the zodiac. What happened to that 13th zodiac symbol? Was
Um,
there a 13th symbol?
there's people that do believe that there is another z- uh, symbol of the zodiac. That's not something that I necessarily use, but I'm open to the thought of it because I do find that very fascinating. And a lot of it has to do too with the different moon phases because the number 13 is associated with the goddess, and the number 13 has been bastardized basically and made, evil, like Friday the 13th, and it's bad luck. No, it actually really isn't. Like, for me, like Friday the 13th, like I usually have really good luck that day. Like I'll find money that I didn't realize I had, or I don't know, that's just an example. But I usually end up having good luck. So it's
Hmm.
very interesting to me that, like, they're trying to take away the number 13th and make it bad because, it's essentially associated with the divine feminine, and the divine feminine energy has really been suppressed. And what we need, it's not so much like the divine feminine taking over. We need a balance of both. We need the divine masculine and the divine feminine energies.
I
That's
agree.
what we need. That's part of why everything's out of balance.
I agree. And I actually, had a flash thought in my head is I know you talk about doing birth charts and those all you need the time that you're born, but even the time we're born is not natural anymore because we've added daylight savings in the 40s. So an hour was added to the day actually.
Hmm.
So how does that affect people's birth charts? Because if you're born in daylight savings, 2 o'clock becomes 3 o'clock. But if you're not in daylight savings, 2 o'clock is 2 o'clock. Does that extra hour cause difference in your birth chart?
I mean, the matter of an hour, I mean, it could. Um, but what you're looking for is you want to get as close to the time that you were born as possible. Um,
Yeah, but what I'm meaning is like I was born at say 2 p.m. in the afternoon. Well, thanks to daylight savings, I actually was born at 1 p.m., but 1 p.m. became 2 p.m. So is my actual birth time 1 o'clock, or do I go by the 2 o'clock? That's what I mean because
oh,
daylight savings, the hour change.
see, I wasn't taught that that really made a difference, but I do think it's interesting that you brought that up. I do. I've never really necessarily took that into account, but I do find that um interesting. Like, it really wouldn't necessarily change much. I mean, like your sun would obviously be the same, and your moon sign would be the same. A lot of them, of those would be pretty much the same.
Yeah. I was just curious because we're talking about adding a month for the original, but not
Hmm.
only the month, but we would have to adjust all of our dates of when we were born because we altered time. And
Right.
so it's just interesting, how much we have altered natural course and think it doesn't really mean anything. But yeah, it does have an impact.
I think too, it's the because different astrologers do um those particular things in different ways. Like there is some people who do add the 13th zodiac sign, where a lot of people just use the 12. I mean, I found it pretty accurate, just using the 12 signs without adding the 13th. So it just kind of goes with whatever your beliefs or whatever you're practicing.
And it's kind of interesting too because, like, my birthday falls on one of the Ides, and I always thought because it was called out in like books as saying, like, beware this Ides, or wow, you got to watch out for the Ides, that I thought, this is a magical day. Come to find out, it just means it's the middle of the month. And so I was like, so if we were to go back to the 13 months, that would mean that the Ides would move. And it's like, I actually lose the specialness of my birthday because the Ides would fall somewhere else. Just something fun to think about every once in a while.
Yeah.
But so we're actually getting close to an hour and 20 minutes, and I'm just curious if there's any topic or anything that you kind of, popping in your head that you're like, ooh, let's share this, or if there's something that you want to share with the audience.
Um, Pretty much anything that I would want to get into would we would almost have to have another episode because
I'm
it would
okay
be a
with that.
lot. There would be a lot to talk about because, like, I feel like we've kind of scratched the surface, but like, there's still a lot more to talk about, and 10 minutes isn't going to be, enough to cover um, some of the topics that I would be interested in sharing with you and our viewers.
Well, I will selfishly say, as a host of a show, then let's bring them on in future episodes.
Yeah, I would absolutely love to come back to your show and talk about those particular topics.
Very cool. And so, do you have anything upcoming that you want to promote or anything?
Um, well, I just started my Shopify business. It's Luna LaFae Tarot. I have readings available on that particular platform, and then also video chat readings and reiki services through TikTok and Facebook and Instagram. Those are usually the social media platforms that I'm on.
Very cool. And I know you sent me links to stuff, and if you didn't send me your Shopify, if you send it to me, I'll put it in the description with the other links to help promote your stuff.
Oh, absolutely. I thought I did, but I can always send them again as well.
Well, I mean, I can't look. Well, actually, no, I can't look right now to see if it is in the description. So I'll double check it, and if it's not, I'll let you know. But if
Okay.
it is in there, then we'll be like, it's solid. We got it. And so, any spooky thoughts or any thoughts for Halloween coming up?
Well, we have a grand water trine right now in astrology, which is falling right now, Halloween and uh, for quite a few weeks. And so I would say that people really need to trust their intuition because it's going to be heightened right now, especially if you are a water sign or you have strong water in your birth chart. You're going to be extra intuitive. Your gifts are going to be even stronger than they normally are. And I think that's a beautiful thing, especially considering, everything that's going on in the world right now, because, you know, people need to feel empowered, and how we can start like making a difference is making a difference within ourselves and trusting our gifts and trusting, that um, doing the inner work and embracing who we are, and trusting our gifts and trusting this process that that we can make a difference, even if it seems like it's small and insignificant, just by being yourself and having that confidence to be authentic.
Very cool. And so, I'm going to wrap up everything right now because I know, Halloween is coming and we do have, you know, it is getting late and everyone's got last minute probably preparations to make. So thank you, Luna, for coming on and trusting me to share your experiences. And I have one message for you from me. And this isn't coming from the divine, so this is from me. From my heart and the heart of my show, thank you for what you're doing for humanity.
You're welcome. I just feel compelled to do that. I want to do something that makes a difference, and I'm happy to know that that's helping people, and that makes me feel good. That makes me feel like I'm living my purpose. So thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah. We I see it. I say we because I keep thinking of myself as a show, and I'm a person. So yeah, I see it. So thank you.
You're welcome.
And so thank you to everyone who came into the chat room and everyone who's watching. Have a safe, wonderful Halloween. Do like, subscribe, and follow if you don't already, because you never know when Luna's going to be popping back up and having another episode. I do promise it is coming as long as our schedules will connect. And so, with that, I'm going to say goodnight to everyone. So, good night.
Good night. Have a lovely evening.